What is up everyone, and welcome back to the Shadows Prevail. I hope you're all doing great, staying safe and keeping things a little spooky. I'm doing awesome too, and honestly it is all thanks to your incredible support. Real quick before we jump into the dark stuff. If you have ever experienced something truly terrifying, maybe something unexplainable happened to you, a friend, or even just a creepy local legend from your hometown, I want to hear about it. You can write your story down, or just record a quick voice memo and send it over to our email. And hey, let me know what you think of today's video in the comments. Drop a like, and please share this with anyone who loves a good mystery. Alright, let's get into it. Today, we are diving into a story that is going to absolutely mess with your head. We are talking about the dark, unsolved mysteries of Mount Kailash, hidden deep in Tibet. There are legends about this place that will literally make your skin crawl. Stories that say, if you even try to climb it, time itself turns against you. Your body gets impossibly heavy. Your hair turns gray. Your nails grow at a terrifying speed, and you age years in a matter of mere hours. Let's go back to the year 1999. A Russian doctor named Ernst Muldashev takes his team on a highly classified feeling expedition to Tibet. They were looking for one specific thing, the most mysterious mountain on planet Earth. After weeks in the freezing wilderness, they returned to Russia and dropped a bombshell that completely shook the world. Muldashev claimed that recently, 4 Siberian climbers had attempted to summit Mount Kailash, but they didn't make it. And here is the truly terrifying part. Within just a year to a year and a half of returning, all 4 of those young, healthy climbers died of extreme old age. One of his team members, Sergei, went on record with a chilling statement. He said, "Mount Kailash is not just a mountain. It is a time machine. Time flows completely differently there, and a human's age accelerates at an insane rate. People went crazy over this. The rumors spread like wildfire, claiming that just standing near the mountain makes your hair and nails grow abnormally fast." But Dr. Muldashev didn't stop there. He claimed that Mount Kailash is entirely hollow on the inside, and hidden within its dark, ancient caves are mythical, ancient beings, still sitting in a state of deep, eternal meditation. These claims were so wild, so viral, that even today if you Google Mount Kailash, this is the exact story that pops up first. But we have to ask, how much of this is actually true? Does time really glitch out around this mountain? And the biggest question of them all, thousands of people have conquered Mount Everest, the highest peak in the world. So why has not a single human being ever successfully climbed Mount Kailash? Let's find out. If you pull up a map, Mount Kailash sits deep in the desolate, remote western part of Tibet, just about 62 miles from the border. It is roughly 21,700 feet tall. Now, if you know anything about mountains, you know that is actually over 7,000 feet shorter than Mount Everest. But height isn't the problem here. It is the shape of the mountain. If you look at pictures of it, It doesn't even look real. It looks like a perfect pyramid. The rock faces are so incredibly steep, almost completely vertical, that heavy snow can't even stick to large parts of it. But what really makes this mountain untouchable is not the ice or the jagged rocks. It is the aura of the place. Because four completely different, major religions, Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and the ancient Bon religion, all agree on one very specific thing. This mountain is the literal center of the universe. For thousands of years, followers of these four religions have made brutal, exhausting journeys just to walk around the mountain. It is a 33-mile trek through freezing altitudes. Hindus and Buddhists walk it clockwise, while Jains and Bon followers walk it counterclockwise. But none of them ever dare to step foot on the mountain itself. To understand why, you have to look at the dark, ancient lore surrounding it. In Hinduism, Kailash is the sacred ultimate home of Lord Shiva and his wife, the goddess Parvati. And there is a very famous, terrifying myth tied to this peak. Long ago, a powerful demon king named Ravana became completely blinded by his own ego. He became so arrogant that he marched up to Mount Kailash and tried to literally rip the mountain out of the ground to carry it away, with Lord Shiva still sitting on top. But as Ravana began to lift the massive peak, Lord Shiva didn't even stand up. He simply pressed down with just his big toe, and that single, effortless movement crushed Ravana under the unimaginable weight of the mountain, trapping the demon king in darkness for 1,000 years. Buddhists have a similar respect for the peak. They believe that a powerful deity named Chakrasamvara lives right at the summit, locked in a state of eternal deep meditation with his consort. In Jainism, the mountain is known as Ashtapada. It is the exact spot where their very first spiritual leader meditated for literally millions of years, before finally breaking the cycle of life and achieving ultimate enlightenment. And then, there is the Bon religion. You probably haven't heard of it, but it is the indigenous, ancient faith of Tibet that existed long before Buddhism even arrived. According to their oldest texts, Mount Kailash is the axis mundi, the exact, physical axis, where the realm of the heavens crashes directly into the earth. Just stop and think about that for a second. Four completely separate religions, with different gods, different texts, and different histories. Yet they all look at this one specific rock and say exactly the same thing. Gods live up there, and humans do not belong. In fact, there is only one other mountain on the entire planet that is shared and worshipped like this by four major religions. That is Adam's Peak in Sri Lanka, a mountain that has a massive, mysterious footprint carved into the stone at the very top. But Mount Kailash is entirely different. It doesn't just have myths, it has strange physical anomalies that absolutely baffle scientists to this day. And what is sitting right at the base of this mountain will genuinely give you chills. Now, people love to claim that Mount Kailash is the oldest mountain in the Himalayas. But science actually says otherwise. The Himalayan mountain range started forming about 50 million years ago, when massive tectonic plates violently crashed into each other. But Mount Kailash? It didn't form until about 30 million years after that. So, geologically speaking, it is completely unique from the rocks around it, But if you pull up a satellite view of the mountain today, you will see something at its base that is genuinely hard to wrap your mind around. Sitting right next to each other, at the very foot of this sacred mountain, are two massive lakes. Lake Manasarovar and Lake Rakshastal. They are literally just a couple of miles apart. They share the exact same altitude, the exact same climate, and the exact same surrounding environment. But they could not be more different. Lake Manasarovar is completely pure. The water is sweet, crystal clear, and perfectly safe to drink. If you walk up to it, you will see fish swimming in the water and lush green vegetation growing all along its edges. It is literally bursting with life. But right next to it, just a short walk away, sits Rakshastal. And this lake is completely dead. The water in Rakshastal is incredibly toxic and heavily salted. You absolutely cannot drink it. There are no fish. There are no birds. There is literally zero plant life growing anywhere near its shores. The water is often violently turbulent, while Manasarovar, right next door, stays perfectly calm and still. It is a literal, geological anomaly. Two massive bodies of water sitting in the exact same spot. One is sweet and full of life, while the other is a toxic, salty wasteland. How is that even possible? I will actually give you the scientific explanation for this in a little bit, but the local people have a very different explanation. They believe that Lake Manasarovar is the realm of the light, the exact place where the gods come to bathe. And Rakshastal? That is the realm of darkness. The territory of demons. According to the dark legends, that toxic lake is exactly where the demon king Ravana sat in absolute darkness, performing brutal, torturous meditation to try and force Lord Shiva to grant him ultimate power. But the lakes aren't the only crazy water anomaly. If you look at the geography, 4 of the most massive, most important rivers in all of Asia, the Indus, the Sutlej, the Brahmaputra, and the Karnali, all originate directly from the slopes around Mount Kailash. These 4 rivers flow out in 4 completely different directions, eventually providing drinking water to billions of people across the continent. Geologists are absolutely baffled by this. The fact that a single, isolated peak serves as the singular water tower for 4 massive continental rivers is almost unheard of in nature. But as crazy as the lakes and the rivers are, they are nothing compared to the physical shape of the mountain itself. Because when you look closely at the rock faces, you start to realize that Mount Kailash might not actually be a natural mountain at all. And the things people claim happen when you get too close to it will literally make your blood run cold. Like I mentioned earlier, the shape of Mount Kailash is incredibly weird. If you look at it from above, it doesn't look like a random formation of jagged rocks. It looks like a near-perfect, massive pyramid. It has 4 distinct flat faces, pointing directly north, south, east, and west, aligning almost perfectly with the points of a compass. It is incredibly rare for nature to carve something that symmetrical, and because it looks so impossibly perfect, the conspiracy theories surrounding it are absolutely wild. When Dr. Ernst Muldashev, that Russian researcher I talked about in the intro, looked at the sheer vertical drops of Kailash. He made a terrifying claim. He stated that Mount Kailash is not a mountain. He claimed it is a hollow, artificial pyramid built hundreds of thousands of years ago by an advanced, non-human civilization. According to his theory, this massive structure is the central hub, directly connected through an underground network to all the other ancient pyramids on Earth, from Egypt to Mexico. Some people even believe that hidden deep beneath the base of Kailash is the mythical, lost city of Shambhala, a utopian world guarded by an invisible, impenetrable energy barrier. But out of all the legends, the most popular, and honestly the most terrifying claim, is the phenomenon of time dilation. The rumor goes that if you step foot near the base of the mountain, the normal rules of space and time completely break down. Things that usually take weeks happen in a matter of hours. People claim that climbers who get too close notice their hair growing visibly longer right in front of their eyes. In just 12 hours, your fingernails will grow as much as they normally would in 2 entire weeks. And this isn't just some crazy internet rumor. Even the highly famous Indian mystic, Sadhguru, went on record with a wild, almost unbelievable story. He stated, "I was at Kailash for 21 days. At one point, I held onto a strand of the mountain. And you will not believe this, but in just 2.5 hours, I felt like I had physically become 10 to 15 years younger." Now, if you ask people online how this is possible, they won't give you a scientific answer. They will tell you that Kailash is a vortex of cosmic energy. They claim it is a literal portal, a stargate to another dimension, where time moves faster, or slower, depending on where you stand. And then, you have the internet detectives, the podcast bros who love to pull up Google Earth and point out something they call the mathematical perfection of Mount Kailash. They will tell you that if you measure the distance from the North Pole directly to Mount Kailash, it is exactly 6,666 kilometers. If you measure the distance from Kailash to the mysterious Stonehenge in the UK, it is exactly 6,666 kilometers. And if you measure the distance to the South Pole, it is exactly double that number, 13,332 kilometers. When people see these numbers, the 666, they freak out. They start claiming that Kailash is the literal axis of the Earth, the single pin that keeps our spinning planet balanced in the solar system. But all of these numbers, all of these wild theories, lead to one massive, terrifying question. There are over 100 mountains on this planet that are way taller, way colder, and way more dangerous than Kailash. We have conquered Everest. We have conquered K2. So why, out of all the climbers in human history, has not a single person ever been able to reach the top of Mount Kailash? What happens to the people who actually try? The answer is going to leave you speechless. So, why hasn't anyone climbed it? If you ask the locals, or read the dark forums online, they will tell you that the mountain actively fights back. They claim that whoever tries to climb Kailash gets physically stopped by an invisible, terrifying force. Climbers report that the moment they step past a certain invisible boundary, their bodies start shutting down. They get hit with blinding, crippling migraines. They lose their sense of direction, becoming completely disoriented. And out of nowhere, the sky will violently turn dark, and massive, deadly blizzards will drop directly on top of them. The lore says the mountain simply will not let you pass. But let's look at the actual documented history. Let's go back to the year 1926. A British explorer named Hugh Rutledge traveled to Tibet to study the peak. He stood at the base, looked up at the sheer vertical rock faces, and officially declared it completely unclimbable. He wrote in his journal that the north face is practically a 90-degree drop, so steep that trying to find a foothold would be absolute suicide. When he finally tried to make a push, a massive freak weather storm forced him to turn back immediately. 2 years later, in 1928, another British climber, R.C. Wilson, decided to try his luck. He actually managed to trek up to about 18,000 feet, but then a heavy, thick layer of unnatural-looking clouds completely swallowed the mountain. But Wilson didn't give up. He and his Sherpa, a local guide named Seton, actually found a narrow, extremely dangerous path that looked like it could lead straight to the summit. His Sherpa pointed up and said, "Sahib, we can climb through here." Wilson geared up. He took a deep breath, but the exact second he stepped his boot onto the path, the rocks beneath his feet instantly gave way. Out of nowhere, the temperature plummeted. A violent blizzard slammed into them, and massive, terrifying lightning bolts began striking the rock faces right above his head. He had absolutely no choice. He had to run for his life. Now, was this the work of a supernatural entity? An invisible guardian? No, it was just the brutal, unforgiving reality of nature. The truth is, climbing Kailash is physically a nightmare, but it is not technically impossible. With modern gear, someone could absolutely do it. The real reason no human being has stood on that summit has nothing to do with ghosts or aliens. It has everything to do with human respect. In 1985, the Chinese government actually offered a highly exclusive climbing permit to a man named Reinhold Messner. Now, if you don't know who Messner is, he is widely considered the absolute greatest mountaineer in human history. He was the first person to climb all 14 of the world's highest peaks. He even climbed Mount Everest completely solo, without extra oxygen, back when people thought doing that would literally make your brain explode. If anyone on this planet could have crushed Mount Kailash, it was Messner. But when the Chinese government handed him the offer, the other climbers in his community pulled him aside. They looked at him and said, "We should not put our heavy boots on a rock that billions of people view as a literal god." Messner stopped. He thought about it, and he flat out rejected the offer. He later gave a beautiful quote to the press, saying, "Conquering this mountain would be like trying to conquer the human soul. If someone really has the urge to climb something difficult, go find a harder mountain. Leave this one alone." But not everyone was as respectful as Messner. In 2001, a Spanish climbing team led by Jesus Martinez Novas actually bought a permit from China to climb the peak. But the second the news broke, the world went crazy. The international backlash was so massive so incredibly intense that the Spanish team had to cancel the entire expedition. Facing intense global pressure, the Chinese government finally folded. They officially issued a permanent, unbreakable ban on climbing Mount Kailash. Yes, you heard that right. Since 2001, it is 100% illegal to climb this mountain. Historically, there is only one record of anyone ever reaching the top. And it comes from a wild, 11th century Buddhist folktale. The legend says a famous Buddhist master named Milarepa got into a massive, magic-fueled argument with a Bon religious master. To settle the debate, they agreed to a race to the summit. When the race started, the Bon master jumped onto a magical drum and started flying up the mountain. He was inches away from the top. But Milarepa? He just sat there, meditating. Suddenly, a single beam of bright sunlight broke through the clouds. Milarepa grabbed onto the light and rode the sunbeam straight to the summit in the blink of an eye, winning the race and claiming the mountain forever. Obviously, that is mythology, not reality. But as crazy as all this sounds, what if I told you that the toxic lakes, the perfect pyramid shape, and the terrifying time dilation rumors all have a completely logical, scientific explanation? And what if I told you that the doctor who started the scariest rumor of all was actually hiding a massive, embarrassing secret? Alright, it is time to face the truth. Let's break down the science and expose the lies. First up, the pyramid shape. Yes, it looks incredibly perfect, but aliens did not build it. Geologists have a specific name for this. They call it a horn peak. Millions of years ago during the Ice Age, massive, slow-moving glaciers ground against the sides of the mountain. Over thousands of years, the ice carved away the rock, leaving behind those sharp, steep, symmetrical faces. It is a completely natural, brutal process of nature. In fact, if you look at the famous Matterhorn in the Swiss Alps, it has the exact same pyramid shape. What about the toxic lake? How can a dead, salty lake sit right next to a beautiful, sweetwater lake? Again, science has the answer. Rakshastal, the toxic lake, is what geologists call an endorheic lake, or a landlocked lake. That means water flows into the lake, but there is no exit. So, when the sun beats down and the water evaporates, all the natural salts and minerals get left behind. Over thousands and thousands of years, those minerals built up, turning the lake into a highly toxic, salty wasteland where nothing can survive. Lake Manasarovar, right next door, sits at a slightly higher elevation. When it rains heavily, its fresh water spills over and flows down into Rakshastal. Since the water is constantly moving out of Manasarovar, it stays fresh. It is literally just gravity and evaporation, nothing supernatural. Now, what about the scariest claim of all? Time dilation. The rapidly aging climbers and the fast-growing nails. I'll just give it to you straight. It is 100% false. According to Albert Einstein's theory of relativity, only two things can actually mess with the flow of time: extreme speed and extreme gravity. Since Mount Kailash is very high up, gravity is technically a tiny fraction weaker at the top. This means time does move incredibly slightly faster up there. But we are talking about fractions of a microsecond. You would never feel it. and it definitely would not make your hair turn gray. So why do people claim they feel dizzy, disoriented, and start hallucinating when they get close? It is not an invisible force. It is called hypoxia, or extreme altitude sickness. When you climb above 13,000 feet, the air gets dangerously thin. Your brain stops getting enough oxygen. When your brain is starving for air, you get blinding headaches. You lose your balance. And yes, you can literally start hallucinating. People are mistaking basic human biology for an angry mountain god. Oh, and that rumor that NASA found a crazy glowing magnetic field around the mountain? Totally fabricated. NASA's Terra spacecraft did take some thermal images in 2003, but if you check their official reports, there is absolutely zero mention of any weird energy or magnetic anomalies. So, where did all of this fake news come from? Remember Dr. Ernst Muldashev, the Russian guy who claimed 4 climbers aged instantly and died? The guy who said the mountain was a hollow pyramid? Well, guess what? He was not a physicist. He was not a geologist. He was literally an eye doctor. None of his claims have ever been published in a legitimate, peer-reviewed scientific journal. No real scientist takes him seriously. Why? Because this guy also publicly claimed that mermaids are real. He traveled to Romania and told the press he had found Dracula's actual underground vampire castle. He called Charles Darwin's theory of evolution completely fake. He even claimed that there are superhumans hiding in India who communicate entirely through telepathy. Why would anyone believe a guy who sounds like he is pitching a bad sci-fi movie? His claims were so embarrassing that scientists in Russia literally published an entire book titled Anti-Muldashev just to debunk his nonsense. And that horrifying story about the 4 Siberian climbers dying of old age? Completely made up. There are no names, no dates, no death certificates. It was a fake story printed in a cheap Russian tabloid, which the internet eventually picked up and spread as fact. The Russian Mountaineering Federation officially stated that the expedition never even happened. And that perfect math about the 6,666 kilometers? Also a lie. It is actually 6,550 kilometers from the North Pole and over 13,400 kilometers from the South Pole. People literally just changed the numbers to 666 to make it sound like a creepy conspiracy. So, there are no time portals, no alien bases, no invisible barriers. But guys, please listen to me when I say this. That does not mean Mount Kailash isn't special. Think about human history for a second. We have conquered the freezing depths of the ocean. We have walked on the surface of the moon. We have driven flags into the highest peaks on Earth. But when it came to this one, specific rock, the entire human race collectively stopped. We looked at it, and we agreed, you know what? This place is sacred. We are going to leave it alone. To me, that is the real miracle. The greatest climbers in the world, the people whose entire lives are built around conquering the impossible, chose not to climb it, out of pure human respect. Mount Kailash teaches us a profound, beautiful lesson. It reminds us that not everything in this world is meant to be conquered. Some things are just meant to be admired. Unlike Everest, you will never buy a ticket to the top of Kailash. It will remain exactly what it has always been. A pure, untouched sanctuary in the clouds. Well, that is the story for today. What did you guys think? Did this mystery give you chills? Or do you think there is still something hiding beneath the ice? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, please smash that like button. And share this story with someone who loves a good mystery. Make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the unknown. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on the Shadows Prevail. Stay safe, try to be good to each other, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.